Hello there, I'm Waddles and welcome back. So, if you've been in the loop with my Let's Play series, you would know that I've been draining an ocean. More specifically, I've been draining the ocean around an ocean monument. While doing this, I have come up with some tips for draining oceans or large bodies of water. So, today I have 5 tips and words of advice from an experienced ocean drainer, I guess. I'm not proud that I'm an experienced ocean drainer, but I know what I'm doing with this thing because I've done it a few times, and I've got some things that might help you. Now, as always with these little countdown videos, go down below and leave one more tip of advice after you hear mine, and for the purpose of this video, we will be draining this river. These tips will work anywhere. It doesn't have to be around an ocean monument, but we will be working on this river today, talking about the tips. I hope this video isn't too oddly specific, but my first tip is, of course, sectioning off areas. When you are approaching something and trying to drain it on a large scale, so I'm not talking about a small in-ground lake, but something like a river like this or even larger, you're going to want to create sections inside of this body of water. Now, how big do you want these sections to be? Well, it's up to you. What that would depend on is how much you are willing to place and also how much you want to struggle draining your water. I recommend placing walls 3 to 5 blocks apart. If you place your walls, like the things I'm making here, farther than 5 blocks apart, you will be struggling a lot to drain the water, and if you place them closer than 3 blocks, you're probably going a little bit overkill. So go about 3 to 5 blocks apart. I personally like to do 4 blocks. I find it is the nice middle ground between placing a lot of walls and struggling draining the water, of course. So walls 3 to 5 blocks apart is tip number 1. Tip number 2 directly connects to the wall tip because it is all about what you are making these walls out of. When you are sectioning off your body of water, use gravity-affected blocks to do this. That means use blocks like gravel sand, maybe even red sand if you have a lot of red sand near your base. Personally, I always forget about red sand like completely. Am I alone here? I completely forget it's in the game. Now, of course, concrete will not work because as soon as concrete touches water, it converts over to the hardened version of the block, and that will always be the case no matter what. So concrete will not work no matter what. You see right here we have a floating concrete block. So you're going to want to collect a lot of sand or a lot of gravel, really. It's up to you, whatever is most convenient. I know if you're on console and maybe you have a smaller world, the sand idea might not be as realistic, so gravel will work too. You'll need to just go and cave a whole bunch to get this. But you want to use these gravity-affected blocks because it makes placing them a whole lot easier. As you can see here, I'm not going up and down in the water. I'm just moving over and placing the blocks and letting them fall. Using blocks like these that are affected by gravity will also help when you are removing them because you can break the bottom one and put a torch and wait for all of these blocks to fall down. You don't have to go back and mine each and every block out again. And trust me, mining each and every single block would not be fun. The first time I was draining an ocean, for some reason I did part of it with dirt blocks, and that was really annoying to go back and dig out completely. So now you have your area all sectioned off and walled off, and you're ready to start draining. This next tip has to do with how you are going to use your sponge. So here is my 4 wide little piece of water. The easiest way, and in my opinion the best way that I have found to use this sponge, is like this. You float up and you place a sponge below you, so you fall on the sponge. Then you would mine up the sponge, and so you have a wet sponge in your inventory. Then you'd move over and continue the process with the sponge on the other wall. Now, typically, when I'm doing this, I try and go 1 block below where I'm standing. Right here, I got 2 blocks below, which is fine still. And then I alternate between what wall I'm on. So I go every other, side, right? I keep flipping sides each time I'm doing a sponge. Now, this is totally up to you, but I like to place the sponge below me because it makes it easier to mine up. If I had the sponge down here and I was, of course, in survival mode, I'd be bobbing up and down trying to break the sponge, which is annoying, of course, and you will also be slowed down because you're in the water. However, if you are on top of the sponge, you will not get slowed down at all, and it makes draining the water really not that bad. This is something that I've actually just come up with while I was draining that monument that I was talking about in the beginning of the video. I find that putting the sponge right underneath myself really increases the speed at which I am doing this. I also do recommend digging the sponge up right away, especially if you're putting it right below you like I was talking about. However, it's up to you. If you'd rather just drain the whole thing and come back and pick up the sponge after, do that too. After you've been placing a lot of your sponge and draining out the water, it is inevitable that you will run out eventually, as long as you're, of course, not in creative. Now, this tip is all about drying out the sponge. Depending on where you are draining, so right here I'm draining a river, and this tip will apply to me a whole lot less, but use kelp to dry out your sponge. In case you didn't know, kelp blocks will smelt things in a furnace, so you can use kelp that will probably be plentiful around you to smelt up more kelp, and then eventually you'll get an excess of dried kelp blocks. Now, each kelp block will smelt 20 items, so that means you can use 1 kelp block to, of course, dry out 20 sponge. Right here, I threw 60 kelp in the furnace and then 3 kelp blocks, and I will get 6 kelp blocks out of this and a little bit extra. Now again, of course, this depends totally upon where you are draining. Right here I'm doing this river, so I don't have any kelp in the river. However, there is tons of kelp around in the ocean near me, so I could very easily swim around, pick up all of this kelp, and bring it over and smelt up my sponge that way. This is a whole lot better than wasting a lot of coal, especially if you're doing an ocean monument. That's going to be a whole lot of drying out of sponge, so don't waste your time going and getting a bunch of coal or something like that when you can use the kelp that is all around you to your advantage. Also, if you don't harvest this kelp eventually, it is all going to grow up to the top of your ocean, and it will not look that cool at all. Like, if you look around, all of the kelp is the same height near me, and that's because I've been in the area for a while. So if you want to preserve the kelp, just don't break the bottom one, and you can use all of the other ones. Now, finally, my final tip of the day, and for this tip, you need torches. So, you know when you're draining a body of water and then you have one stubborn block of water that is, still in existence? Now, of course, you could go ahead and use a sponge to get rid of this block of water, or you can use a torch. Place the torch down and then break the torch and your water source block is gone. Now, this is only going to work if there is a singular block of water. So right here I have one. I can place it and there we go, clear out a little bit extra water. However, right here I have, a bunch of sources next to each other, and this won't work at all. You could try and be fast about it, but really, it's kind of wasting your time at that point. The main idea is to not waste any sponge that you will then have to dry out on singular water sources. So definitely get some torches and use them on these little instances like this where you have one, sometimes maybe even 2 or 3. If you're fast enough, you can get rid of them both, which is kind of nice. It's less sponge to dry out, which totally makes your job easier, so I mean, why not, right? Again, however, it will only work when you have 1 or 2 water sources, not 4, just like this. You will have to break out your sponge again and get rid of all that, and then boom, there we go. There's another one that I can get rid of. I lied. I have one more tip for you, and that is a really quick one. I'm sure you know this one already, but right here is how I recommend you remove your walls once you are to that point. Dig out the bottom block. I like to do it with my hand because I can time it a whole lot better, and place a torch down real quick and let the walls fall just like that. Nice and easy. This is a super simple way to remove the walls, and it costs pretty much absolutely nothing. You won't have to make a bunch of shovels or pickaxes or anything like that. You just need a torch and a little bit of patience because, of course, breaking something by hand. However, you can use a shovel if you'd like and then switch over to the torch or have it in your offhand or something like that. But I don't like to do it like that because I find I fail at doing it that way more times than I succeed. And so there we go. My river is drained, and those are my tips for draining bodies of water. Now, I hope this video helped you out. If you're doing a lot of draining, good luck. I know it's very repetitive and sometimes not the most fun thing to do. You could do what I did and just watch a bunch of videos on YouTube while I was draining something. It helped pass the time a whole lot more. But go ahead and go down below and leave one more tip for me in terms of draining water down below, and then go have a good day. My name is Waddles. Leave a like if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.